We're going to be talking about matching your Canvas gradebook with your syllabus to make sure everything lines up and for a better student experience. We're going to just go through some basics of your average syllabus, talking about percentages and weights, the gradebook a little bit, and even the structure of the course. And then, of course, this is all being recorded and will be up on the same website, the Keep Teaching website that we had before in about a week's time or so. So I'm going to jump into my sandbox here that I have here. And so I already have a bunch of stuff created, but you can see the general idea of what we're trying to do. So mainly when you set up your syllabi, right, the thing we're going to focus on today is telling your students what things count for what in the course as far as grading and percentages go, and how to set that up in the assignments in your gradebook. So say, for example, in your syllabi, you have your assignments or your homework, for example, are worth 25% of your course. And then your quizzes might be worth 30% of your course. And then you have your midterm and your final, which calculate out the last 50% or so. So what we're going to do is kind of set it up along those lines, and I'll give you an example of what I've set up here in the course so that you can see what that looks like. Now, you would create assignment groups for each one of those areas that you have percentaged out. Like if you have your homework, your assignments, your quizzes, your midterm, your final, even participation. So you would go into the assignments area of your course, and you would set up these groups here. So you can see here, I have several groups already set up: testing, assignments, discussions, so on and so forth. And you would set that up by hitting the plus group icon here in the upper right. So if I click on this, I can quickly give a group a name. And if I already know the percentage that I want to give it, I can type the percentage in right away. But you don't have to do that right away. You can just set up all your groups just by the titles, and you wouldn't see any of these percentages here yet. And then what you need to do is hit these three dots on the right-hand side, and you're going to want to look at your assignment group weighting. The assignment group weighting here, you can change and edit them as you feel necessary. I've done this in a very eccentric way to prove what you can do. So you set up all your percentages down here, and of course you want to make sure that it adds up to 100% when you're all finished. But I wanted to show you that you can set up 0% categories. So like if you want to do participation, but you don't want it to count towards the final grade necessarily, you could set up 0%. If you have quizzes that are more like practice quizzes, you could set up a category for practice quizzes and weight that at 0% so it doesn't affect the final grade. You could be very eccentric and put in 52% or 53%. You can be as precise as you want. The last thing you want to do is make sure that, of course, you've checked the box at the upper corner, and that will make sure that all of these different areas get weighted. When you're done with picking all your different weights from your assignment groups, you click Save. Now, Canvas will do all the math for you. So if you have your assignments in your assignments category and it's worth 52% of the grade, what it'll do is it'll go in, it'll add all the numerators and all the denominators together all the way to the very end, and then it will do that math, right? Divide out, and then it will multiply it by 52%, and you will get a certain number of points. So for example, this is obviously up to 100%. So if you had a score come in assignments, let's say, it averaged out to 900 points, you would multiply that by 52%. You would get like roughly 45 points towards your possible 100-point total. So that's how Canvas does the math based off these different percentages. So what you need to keep in mind is once you've got these groups set up and you've got your percentages set up, when you go and you're creating your assignments, anything graded, so your assignments, your discussions, your quizzes, all those things that you might have graded, you'll need to pick what group those go into and make sure that they're in the right spot. So I'll just show you where that's at. If I go into assignment here and I go down and I have my assignment group, that's where I'm going to choose where to put this assignment. So if I know that this is actually like a homework assignment and I want it in the assignments area, I just need to change that to assignment, and then that'll make sure it's in the appropriate group. And that's just for assignment, but it's very similar on any of the other functions. So for example, quizzes, if you were to do set up a new like classic quiz and open that up, again, it's the same kind of thing. You would just look at your assignment group here and you would go down and put it into quizzes. And that way it's weighted appropriately in the appropriate area.
Cassidy, we've got a question in the chat about weights while we're still on this page. And the question is, I teach a 5,000 level class and I have a project for graduate students that is not done by the undergraduates. Due to this, the way that the assignment groups are weighted is different for undergraduates versus graduates, and they're both in the same course. So for example, the final is 30% for undergraduates and 27% for graduates. Is there a way to handle both of that in Canvas? In prior years, I put the undergraduate scheme in Canvas and then manually adjusted the graduate scores. Do students see any indication or estimate of their final grade? If so, and if I need to continue manually adjusting the graduate scores, I probably should advise graduate students that the grade they see in Canvas is different than what they will actually get, as I will have to manually add in their project grade.
Right. And actually, yes, that's probably the best way to do it. When you're looking at your weighted grades, the way you're currently doing it now, you could, make one category, the undergraduate and the graduate level, but then your percentage would be over 100%. And it would hurt one or the other group because they would be getting a less percentage. So yeah, manually adjusting those is probably the best way. If they're in different sections, you don't necessarily have to cross-list them, and then you could weight them in their own courses in the appropriate way. But if you desire to cross-list them, then yeah, you're going to have to adjust those by hand. So setting up your assignments, your quizzes, your discussions, anything that's graded in your in your assignment groups here, this is just on this only shows on the assignment page, your groups. So when you go into, like, say, modules, if you're setting up your course from the beginning, you can set them up in any linear fashion you want. The groups don't affect this. You just can add them in here. Traditionally, most people add it by weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. So you can just add your assignments and your everything else right in here, and it doesn't affect your weight groups at all. So there's no correlation between the two. The modules is just kind of a graphical representation of what they should be doing that week, and it won't affect your groups. When you go into your gradebook, you'll have a listing of all of your assignments, quizzes, discussions, anything that's graded in here. And down at the end, you'll have your subtotals. Now, your subtotals are created by all of those groups that you have made. So, for example, I have that discussions group. So there's my 10% of my grade, and this is a subtotal. I have that quizzes group. It was 25% of my grade, and then you have your subtotal column here. In the gradebook too, if you ever get your stuff's kind of squished like this, you can grab in between now and make it a little fatter and make it so you can see everything that's written in there. Just FYI too, in the gradebook, you can rearrange your columns. So if you want to move one over in front of the other, you can do that and they'll switch and it will stick. So you can arrange your gradebook columns in any way you want, but I definitely recommend leaving the subtotals at the end so you can see all those. So looking at anything, if you're inside here, you can look at any of your particular assignments and you can click on them and it'll take you to the assignment, and you can click on this and jump straight to the speed grader so that you can see, you could do your grading straight from your gradebook. Get out of that. If you ever export your gradebook, underneath actions, you can choose export, and it'll basically give you an Excel version of everything you see here. The only difference will be is that down here with all your subtotals, you also have a current grade and a final grade. Now your current grade in the export shows what the students see, and what that basically is whatever their grade is at this moment in time. So let's say, for example, you have 10 assignments throughout your course and they're all worth 100 points, and they've only done 2 assignments so far. If they average a 92% between those 2 assignments, then their current grade will be 92%. The final grade that you'll see in that exported gradebook will be something very low, something like 12 or 22%, because the final grade counts their first 2 grades and then the other 8 assignments as zeros. And so they've got a much lower score. So that's why you'll see differences between the current grade and the final grade. Current grade's only what they've accomplished, and the final grade is everything accumulated together. If you ever get to the end of the semester and you export your grade book and you notice there's a difference between the current and the final grade, then that means that there are things that you might not have graded. So like I have all these open spaces, right? I should turn those into zeros, right? So that the current grade matches. Or if I have assignments where I've got icons on them, like this means there's a submission I haven't graded. If there was a quiz, you would have that little rocket ship icon to let you know that that's something you haven't graded. Basically, at the end of the semester, you should see nothing but numbers in these boxes. None of them should be blank or have little icons in them. When you're setting up your gradebook at the beginning of the semester, as part of looking at what you're going to do with the syllabus, you can click on the gear icon that's over here in the upper right hand corner, and you can set up late policies if you have a late policy in your syllabus. Some instructors will say, okay, I want to automatically apply any missing assignments with a grade of 0. And this is great because you'll never end up with these empty spaces in here. If you're one of those who does not accept late assignments, or, you know, after the assignment is closed, you want it to be a 0 because now it's past due, you can put that 0 in here and it will automatically add those after the until date is closed for each assignment that you have. You can always go in and manually override it if you chose to accept an assignment late for a good reason. But for now, you can put in the zeros here. If you accept late assignments, and how you would accept late assignments is that the due date in your assignment doesn't, you have your until date and your due date. Your due date is when the assignment's due. If your until date matches your due date, then the assignment closes down at the same time. But some instructors like to accept assignments, will accept assignments late, so they put that until date to be a couple of days later. If you want to automatically apply a percentage off for late assignments, you can do that here. And you can say automatically apply deductions, and you want to do late submissions, 5% per day, with a possible lowest grade of, and you can choose this even by hour. So if you only give them like an extra couple of hours, if they're late, you could deduct 5% per hour that they're late. So those are all options that you could set up if you have it in your syllabus, that you automatically deduct points for late assignments. And you could all put in your syllabus that you will automatically get a 0 if you have gone past the until date on any particular assignment, quiz, or discussion. So you can set that.
Oh, sorry, Cassidy.
Sure.
We've got a couple more questions while we're looking at grade calculations too. Okay. One of them is, can you explain how Canvas calculates the current grade? So for example, if you have a category for assignments, but only one assignment has been completed, does Canvas use that one grade to represent the entire percentage for that group?
It does, because Canvas doesn't know if you haven't gotten to the other assignments yet, or you haven't graded the other assignments yet. So it doesn't assume that those are graded. So it only gives the current score would only represent that one assignment that the student has done, unless you have this set up to automatically give them a 0 if it's past the until date. Then it would calculate that one score plus any zeros because those have already passed their due date. But yes, the current grade is only what they've accomplished thus far.
And the other one is, if there are multiple exams in a course, would all the exams be put under that category heading?
They can be. So like if you have like a quiz, some instructors do like a quiz every week, to check them on the reading, then you could set up an assignment group called reading quizzes, and you could give that a certain percentage. But you could also set up another assignment group for the midterm and another assignment group for the final. So you could have your reading quizzes worth 10% of your grade, your midterm worth 20% of your grade, and your final worth 30% of your grade. And you just set up different groups for those different percentages.
Great, thank you.
All right. The next thing you might want to set up at the beginning of the semester is your grade posting policy. This top one here, automatically post grades, means as you're going through the speed grader and you're putting in grades, or as the students finish quizzes that can be automatically graded, then those grades will be released to those students right away. The second option is one that we like, which is manually post grades, which means that you would have to go in and release those grades to the students. So this works out great, especially if you have like quizzes that you're spread out throughout the day for different sections or different people. If you have papers, that we know takes a long time to grade, that you may not get them all done in one night or, that kind of thing. So by manually posting grades, you can put grades inside Canvas. And then when you're ready, when you finished everybody and you're happy with it, you have, because sometimes you may have to go back and readjust somebody else's grade because you realized in the scheme of things that maybe, this something was being graded harshly at the beginning versus the end of a grade. You can go adjust all those things and get all your grades just the way you want them, and then go in and release them to the students all at once. So that's what you do if you choose manually posted grades. And let me show you what that looks like. So if you've chosen manually posted grades, underneath your assignments, it would have the word manual. And when you're done grading, you just hit the 3 dots and you go down here to grade posting policy and release them. And then that way the students, and then everybody would get all their grades at the same time. And then this last category is something that's brand new to Canvas. It's called Allow Final Grade Override. And all that does is give you a final grade override ability at the end of your gradebook down here, and you could manually type in a grade. So say, for example, you have participation, but you have it weighted at 0% because you don't want it automatically factored. You kind of want to factor it yourself. Then you could go in and type in a grade here at the end. If they have an 89, you want to push them to a 90, that kind of thing. You could put that in here. Now, this will show to the students, but it is all manual and thus far doesn't show up in any reports or anything like that. It's still brand new, so it would just all be visual for you and the students.
We also have a question about in the categories about rules. So if we have someone who drops the lowest 2 quiz grades, for example, how can Canvas help calculate for that for us?
Sure. So inside your weighted groups, you can set up rules. So if I go and edit a particular group, I have a couple of different options. So first of all, I can edit the title and the percentage if I want to do that here. The second is the number of scores to ignore. I can always say, okay, drop the first, the one lowest score from this particular assignment group. And I can say also drop the highest score. So what I'm really doing, if I have like 10 quizzes, I'll give them one, bad quiz, and then their one really great quiz to kind of equal out the curve. I could drop both of those. The other thing you can do, especially if you've put quizzes that may be worth more in the same weighted assignment group, you could also say, I want you to drop the lowest score, which is what I've got here, the one lowest score, but I don't want you to ever drop this particular assignment because it's very important to the class, right? So if I save that, then in this assignment group testing, it's worth 15% of the total grade. It will automatically drop the lowest grade from this group, but never the testing PowerPoint assignment. And you could set up rules, multiple rules on all of these different assignment groups throughout the course.
And since you're right there, how can you show them one more time how to get to this screen where they can apply rules?
Oh, sure. It's just the assignments option here. So you can see I'm in my course here and then I'm under assignments. So it's the same one here. And all I've done is set up groups here. If I open this, you would see all my assignments within the group. So maybe that was what was confusing too. It's just I have it collapsed so that we can just see the groups as opposed to the assignments within the groups. All right. So back to the gradebook real quick. You do have a couple of different views in the gradebook. You can switch to, you can do Gradebook History, which will show you the students' grades and maybe how they've changed over time. And you can narrow this down by a particular student. So if I look up just this one student, then I can hit filter and I can see that on December 3rd, the grader being me on this particular one, before it was a -20 and I changed it to a 50. So they're getting a lot of extra credit. But you can see that gradebook history and you can see when grades got changed. If you have multiple TAs, this could be an important view to be able to see, who changed the grade, when it was changed, what it was changed from, and what it was changed to. If you are using final grade override, you can show that here, but this is mainly just for tracking them down. You can, like I said, you can sort by student. You can look at a particular TA or grader, maybe a co-instructor. You can look, artifact is usually the assignment. So like if I do that, I can look at this particular assignment for this particular student and filter it down by that and see all the grade change history for that.
So still in assignment categories, we have one question. I have a group of daily homework that are mostly graded complete, incomplete, but 2 of those during the semester will be graded on a scale of 100%, and those will be randomly selected for that percentage grading. Can I keep all of those homework assignments in the same group and change the grading policy for just 2 of them? Or do I have to create a separate group for the 2 assignments that I want to grade out of 100 instead of complete and incomplete?
I guess what threw me was the randomly selected.
Yeah.
Complete, incomplete, as you may already know, they get either all the points or none of the points based off of that. If all of those put together, so let's say you have 5 complete incompletes, and that can add up to 50 points. And then you have your 2 100-point assignments, then you have a possibility of 250 points there. If that's all weighted the same, 10% of the final grade, then you can leave them all in the same category. But if you're going to weight them differently, then I would put them in different groups, obviously. But because of the denomination of the points, 10 points apiece versus 100 points apiece, the ones worth 100 will automatically be weighted more, obviously 10 times more than the other assignment each, as if you compare them 1-to-1. So you can leave them in the same group and they will weight themselves out like that.
And by random, she clarified that it just means the students don't know which 2 are going to be graded, but it's more about keeping them on their toes and letting them know that at some point 2 of these will be looked at a little bit differently.
Okay. Yeah, so you can still put them all in the same category, and they'll be marked as zeros. So there's your potential of hazard there, is that the ones that aren't graded will be marked as zeros and count against them. But what you can do in the grade book is come in and excuse a grade. So if I'm looking at a particular assignment and I'm looking at, let's say this one here, I can come in and just type in an EX. And what that does is excuse the assignment, and it won't count for or against the student in that particular assignment group.
Our other question is, can you use Canvas to convert the numerical grades to the letter grades that need to be submitted in my.smu? And how can you let students see their final course grade?
Okay, so as long as you don't hide the totals, let me show you where that is. So in your course settings, down here at the bottom, you have more options. If you've been using our template, this was selected by default. If you're not using the template, then this is not selected by default. But the option here to hide student grade summary, this would hide their subtotals. So if you want to hide those from the students till the end of the semester, you could do that. Not really something I like. I prefer to let the students know how they're doing all throughout the semester. So I don't hide it. So you want to make sure this is unchecked, and then that way it will always show what the students see. So for example, let me go here and click on student. So when you click on a student side people view, you get this little pop out, and it'll show them their current grade, how many assignments are missing, how many assignments were late, the last 10 things graded, and how active they are in the class. It's just a quick overview of kind of how they're doing. You can email them, of course. And but let me show you what they would see as a student in their grade book. So their grade book is vertical as opposed to horizontal. So they would see all their different grades with different icons and everything. But as long as you don't hide the subtotals, they would see their assignment groups that you've created and what those subtotals are, as well as their current score, not their final score, their current score, because Canvas, again, doesn't know if you haven't finished grading yet. So it doesn't factor anything in that does not have a grade yet. Okay, I guess I got the question good. I was expecting a follow-up to that one, but also inside Gradebook, you can look at an individual view. So say if you're meeting with a student and you want to talk to them about their grade, and of course you don't want to show them the gradebook because you don't want them to see everybody else's grade as well, you can come down and choose individual view. There are a plethora of options on how to narrow this down. How you want to sort it, by due date or alphabetical. You can do all that. You can even look at any particular section individually. You can show the student, if you don't automatically have that turning their grades into a 0, remember that option we saw earlier where if it's past the due date for the course, the until date for the assignment, you could give them a 0 automatically for the homework because they've missed it, obviously. If you don't have that turned on and you want to look at what their student grade would be with zeros calculated, you can use this option here, but all it is a visual option. It doesn't actually change anything if you use this particular option here. You can come down and you can look at a particular student. So if I choose a particular student, then I can show this student how they're doing, what their subtotals are. We could talk about their grade and everything that's in here. If you choose, you have to choose an assignment in order to let them look at at their grades for any particular assignment. All it does is show subtotals in there unless you pick something. So if you wanted to talk about a particular assignment, you could see that they got a 5 out of 50. You could look at their submissions if necessary. And again, their subtotals here at the bottom. And you can quickly bounce through assignments by clicking next and previous to go to the next assignment and look at that one and so on and so forth for this particular student.
Could you show us again how you got to this screen?
Sure. So if you go to your normal gradebook, looks like this. Oops, it didn't change. Gradebook. So from here, it's underneath the same option where we saw Gradebook History. This one is just individual view. So when I choose individual view, it'll take me to that where I could sort that particular student. And then to get back, now this screen will stick. So the next time you go to Gradebook, you'll come back here. So what you'll want to make sure you do is go back to the original Gradebook to get back to that view. It's through this drop down up here.
And we have a question specifically about labs. The lab component of my course is worth 25%, but the lab sections are listed as separate courses in Canvas. Is there a way to reflect this in Canvas or have the gradebooks link?
So basically you're wanting to weight the whole lab section as 25% of the whole grade?
Right.
You could set up an assignment group for all of your lab assignments and make that worth 25%, and then just make sure to put all of any and all lab assignments in that weighted category, and then that's how it could reflect the total grade if you have them cross-listed.
Yep, that makes sense.
Underneath view here, you have several options in your gradebook. You can, like I said before, you can manually arrange this. So you could make these a little fatter and then, drag them in front of each other. And when you do that, this will stick as this view unless you come in here and change these view. So you can assort your, by assignments in alphabetical order, by due date, by point, or even by module, and it'll, kind of put them all together based off week 1, week 2, week 3, or however you've set up your modules. the thing to notice here, or to note in whether you arrange it or you filter it, that kind of thing, is you want to make sure that you come back and redo this, because it will stick. The view will stick. So if I select by modules, it gives me this module option here. And if I just want to look at the training module, then that's all I'm going to see right here. So I want to come back and put it back to all modules to be able to see that. Because sometimes we'll get phone calls that, your gradebook view is restricted. You can't figure out how to fix it. And it's probably because if you've ever rearranged these options, like newest to oldest on due date, then that option sticks. And so you'll need to come back and undo that option and rearrange it to default to get it back to what was normal. Your statuses, you can set up however you want. They're basically the color-coded items that you can use. If you click on one, you can change the color. You could pick one, you can put in your own hexadecimal color, whatever makes sense to you. And these are the basic categories that you have. You'll mainly see late assignments, missing assignments, and excused assignments if you use them. And that's why I've got certain things color-coded here. So like the blue one, you can always check and go down to statuses and be like, what does that blue mean? Oh, they resubmitted the assignment. Okay. So that's how you can see what these different colors mean.
So just as another logistics question in this, in the vein of trying to make sure that our percentages match what's in the syllabus, if there are 5 scheduled quizzes that count for 10% of the final grade, from the student perspective, would it make more sense for each assignment group to be its own quiz, or putting each quiz in an overall group called quizzes?
Yeah, I would definitely put, if all together they add up to 10%, then yeah, put them in one weighted group for quizzes worth 10%.
As long as we don't have courses, as long as we don't have in settings that missing grades count as a 0, then those empty spaces in the gradebook, because we hadn't gotten to those assignments yet, wouldn't affect the total. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And you can turn on this notes column here, which shows up right here, and it's just basically a place for you to keep notes about the student. Unfortunately, it's only one note column. You can't keep, it doesn't pertain to like any of these particular assignments. If you were to click on an individual assignment and click on this little icon right here, then you can pull up what is kind of like a mini speed grader. You can quickly give them a grade, tag it with something, and give them some comments if you want to do that. And you can jump to the next student, or for this particular student, you can jump to the next assignment and go through one student at a time or one assignment at a time, or you can jump to the full speed grader and get all of the options that you have in there, like seeing the submission and being able to do annotations and stuff like that. But this notes column is only for you. Only you get to see it. The students don't get to see the notes you put in here in this particular column. So you can make notes about the student, or anything else you might need to for here, just for your own records. And then the last one is actions, which is import, export. We just talked about that briefly, how you can export a gradebook. You can also import a gradebook. It's kind of, you have to be very careful with how you do it. You can export your current gradebook, and you can input all the grades manually by hand if you want to, if you've got a bunch of them to do. And then you can re-import it, and it would update all the grades inside Canvas if that's something you wanted to do. You just got to be careful not to start rearranging the columns and renaming assignments or changing anything else. You pretty much just want to stick to changing the numbers, and then you can import the gradebook back in to update the grades. Okay. Anything else we want to talk about as far as weighting grades or rules or matching your current grading scheme to your syllabus.
Where do I find the settings to view ungraded assignments as a 0?
Sure. So that's underneath this gear icon right here in your gradebook view. It's always up here in the upper right-hand corner. If you click that, you can say automatically apply grade for missing submissions, and you can put in your 0% here. It's right above automatically deducting points for late assignments if you choose to take late assignments.
And we also have a question about the attendance roster showing up in the gradebook.
Okay.
When it goes up and how to possibly have it count differently or not count at all.
Okay. Whenever you first click on attendance and you take your first attendance, meaning you mark someone as present or absent or whatever, then it will automatically create an assignment in your assignments page. It will automatically create a column in your gradebook, and it is worth 100%. If you don't want that particular assignment included, then you just need to choose, and I'm just going to pick a random one here, but it's the same idea. You just need to choose the box that says don't include in the final grade, which is this box right here. So if you check this box, then they'll still see their attendance on a scale of 100%. Like they'll know they've made 80% of the classes, that kind of thing. But it will not be included as part of the final grade. No matter what category it's in, it'll be just excluded by checking that option.
Back to the classes that have labs as different sections. Since there isn't really a way to have Canvas naturally link those two gradebooks, so they're the 75% and the 25% are together, is it better than, would it be best practice to then hide the final grades or just warn the students ahead of time that the Canvas totals are not accurate of their total grade, just accurate of those two pieces of it?
I think the best way to handle it is to cross-list those lab sections into the lecture section and create an assignment group for all of the lab assignments. And that way it's all weighted into the same gradebook. And you could affect that there. If that's not possible, like you have different teachers, different instructors, different TAs, whatever, and you want to keep those things separate, then yeah, I would definitely let the students know that their grades will be affected by factoring in 25% by the labs at the end. But I still would not hide those subtotals from them because I don't know. I always like to let the students know how they're doing thus far. And you could create an assignment group worth 25% that isn't affecting their score yet. But if you have a lot more questions about that, definitely reach out to your ATSD. They can help you set that up and even help you get that stuff cross-listed.
Is there a way to grade assignments as letter grades instead of number grades?
Sure. So whenever you create an assignment, you have the option to choose how you want it graded. So you can come down here and choose letter grade. The only thing that is a catch about the letter grade is you have to have a grading scheme set up. Now, by default, the grading scheme that we've set up for you in Canvas is one that matches SMU. So if you click on grading scheme, you can see the A minus, B plus, all that kind of stuff, and how it's laid out. So anything from an 87 to less than a 90 is a B plus. If you want to set up your own grading scheme, you can come down here and say manage grading schemes, and you can build your own from scratch and use that grading scheme when it comes to using letter grades. What they'll see in the gradebook is they'll see a letter grade. They'll see a B or a B plus or something like that. I believe I have one set up like that in my gradebook. But do know when it comes, of course, to calculation, you need, see, like I have B plus, B minus, like see, I have that set up this way here. But when it comes to calculating the grade, of course, it will use the grading scheme that you've selected and take the points from that in order to do a calculation. So it'll do that in the background, but students will see a letter grade if that's what you want to give them.
And just kind of to hit back on the idea about how the gradebook can at least be a real accurate way for students to check their progress. Is there a way that the completed assignments can be counted in a category and it's only the completed assignments that students are seeing? I think that we've got a couple of questions about how, if we have categories with quite a few assignments in there, if only some are graded, what exactly will the students see as what their average is?
Sure. So let me go down here to the end of my subcategories. So basically, like if I'm doing quizzes here and it's worth 25% of the grade, and we've done 2 out of 10 quizzes and they're averaging a 90 on those 2 quizzes, say they got an 89 and a 91 and their average is a 90, then they'll see as a subtotal, they're currently earning a 90% in this category. And that category is worth 25% of the grade, which will automatically be calculated into the final grade. So they will only see, students will only see the average of the homework that has been graded or the average of the quizzes that have been graded thus far in the course.
And I think we have time for one more question. And that last question is, can we explain how to curve a grade, how to curve grades?
Sure. So if we pick an assignment that has more than zeros, you can come and choose to curve grades. Now, the caveat I will give you about curving grades is be very sure that you've got the curve correct the way you want it before you click save, because you cannot uncurve a grade. So if I choose curve here and the average score, and it warns you, cannot be undone, right? And so if I look at my current scores and I assign zeros to the unsubmitted one, so now everyone would be graded, this is the current score, and I want the average score to be a 9, then I hit curve grades. Once I've done that though, I can't undo that curve. If I look at it later and it's wrong, what I'm basically gonna have to do is recurve the curve. So I'd have to come back here and curve them again. You can't just undo it. But that's how you curve a grade, is you pick what you want the median score to be, and then it does a bell curve based off of that median score. The last thing I'll mention just off the cuff in here is that in every assignment, you have this really powerful tool to message students who, and if I choose that, I can choose to message all the students who have not submitted the assignment yet, or who scored less than a certain score. Say if this is worth 100 points, if they scored less than a 60, then I want to kind of tell them that they need to go back and reread this or reread that, or maybe that they should set up an appointment with me. Then I can meet with those students who scored poorly on that. Or if you haven't finished it yet and it's due really quick, I want to give them a nudge that says, hey, don't forget, your homework is due this Friday and it's worth, 20% of your grade, or whatever the case might be. Or on a positive note, I can give those students who scored more than 90% on a relatively hard exam. And as you can see, nobody scored a 90% on mine. But if someone, they did, you could give them accolades and tell them kudos for doing a good job on a relatively hard assignment. Anything else?
On that messaging, when the students see the messages, do they see that as kind of the equivalent of a blind carbon copy, so they don't see the other students who are messaged?
That's correct. It only goes to them. They get a notification just like normal, but it's only them.
Okay, I think that we're right at 11:45, so we are kind of right at our time. If there's anything else that you wanted to say before we close out.
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming to our little session today and seeing what we had to say about gradebooks and syllabi. If you have more questions, I highly recommend you reach out to your ATSD in your area. They are well versed in this, and if they don't know the answer, they can reach out and find the answer for you. They are a great resource for everyone. So thank you again for attending, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.